Chapter 5. The Blessing of Light. The High Priestess stood atop the altar, her staff raised high as golden light radiated outward in waves. Her voice boomed across the battlefield, carrying a divine resonance that silenced even the chaos of war. By the light, let your strength be magnified. Let your blades strike true, your spells burn brighter, and your will remain unbroken. The Crusaders around her shuddered as the blessing enveloped them, a visible aura of gold shimmering over their forms. The air grew electric as the power surged through their ranks. Plus 140 attack power, plus 10% spell critical chance, 5% melee and ranged critical chance. Duration, 2 hours or until death. The soldiers cheered, their spirits bolstered by the divine power. The High Priestess lowered her staff and turned toward the ancient altar, its surface carved with runes that glowed faintly in response to her presence. The High Priestess knelt before the altar, her polished armor reflecting the flickering candlelight. She placed her staff reverently across the runed surface, the crystalline tip pulsing faintly as if responding to her touch. She began to chant, her voice soft and melodic, weaving ancient prayers that carried a tangible weight. The language was one few could understand, syllables that resonated with power, each word vibrating in the air like a string plucked on a celestial harp. The runes carved into the altar glowed faintly, their light pulsing in rhythm with her voice. The High Priestess extended her hands over the altar, her fingers trembling slightly as golden strands of light flowed from her palms and wove into the runes. The energy swirled and coalesced like threads being spun into a divine tapestry. Behind her, the priests stood watch, their glowing staves held high, the crystalline tips casting faint prisms of light onto the stone walls. One priest, his face etched with concern, stepped forward cautiously. "High Priestess, the energy is faltering. Do you require assistance?" She nodded without looking up, her voice steady despite the strain. "Lend me your strength, I will not fail." The priests formed a circle around her, their movements deliberate and synchronized. As they began to chant, their voices joined hers, weaving into a single powerful hymn. Each priest raised their staff, and beams of golden light arced from the crystals, connecting at the altar. The runes flared brighter, the glow intensifying as the energy converged. The ground beneath them hummed faintly, and the air became charged, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to their will. Sweat beaded on the High Priestess's brow as she maintained the chant, her hands never faltering as she poured her energy into the ritual. For a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath, the divine light pulsating in perfect harmony with her voice. Corwin's heart pounded as he fought amidst the chaos, his sword flashing in the golden light of the High Priestess's blessing. "Hold the line," he shouted to his comrades, parrying an undead claw that lashed out toward him. The battle was a blur of shrieks and steel, the consecrated ground beneath him glowing faintly as it repelled the undead. Corwin turned to block another strike, his blade biting into decayed flesh. For a moment, he felt invincible, the blessing coursing through him like fire. But in the din of battle, he didn't see the shadow behind him. The undead struck from behind, a jagged blade piercing his side. Corwin's breath hitched as pain flooded his body. He stumbled forward, his sword slipping from his grasp as he fell to his knees. "Corwin," a voice screamed, filled with anguish. Captain Rhyne watched in horror as his soldier collapsed, the blessing's golden glow fading from his body. Rage and grief consumed him as he charged forward, his sword swinging in a deadly arc. The undead scattered under his fury, but Corwin lay still, his lifeblood pooling on the consecrated ground. The High Priestess felt the energy falter, her voice cracking as the divine connection wavered. "No," she whispered, her hands gripping the edge of the altar. "This cannot fail." Her eyes flicked toward the priests. "Buff me! Lend me all your strength!" The priests chanted louder, their staves glowing brighter as they poured their energy into her. The runes on the altar pulsed in response, but the divine light still refused to coalesce. In the distance, the undead regrouped, their relentless advance beginning anew. Captain Rhyne fell to his knees beside Corwin's body, his bloodied hand gripping the young soldier's lifeless shoulder. His voice, raw and broken, echoed across the battlefield. "Corwin!